Hello and welcome back to 209 Prep Sports. Back in the studio with Scott Bryant. Kind of entering the finish line of this football season and all the other sports getting ramped up hot and heavy. But we'll kind of wrap up the football season with this week and maybe a little bit next week, just a recap of the season and how things went. It's been eventful. You know, I think there's been a lot of good football this spring. I think it was really, really good for the kids and the coaches and the families to kind of have some normalcy. But it wasn't without its issues. You know, we're still dealing with some stuff with, COVID and those types of things. We got a lot of games getting canceled, not a lot, but a decent number of games getting canceled. Seasons getting shut down sooner than they were supposed to. But I think through thick and thin, the people that really worked the hardest to make this happen should be super proud of themselves for this even happening at all. You and I talked about this all fall. Just give us a chance. Expect people to do the right thing. And more or less it was done. When we get a positive test, I don't think there were people hiding it. And games are getting shut down and that type of thing. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think the coaches have done an outstanding job of maintaining the rules and keeping their players in line. I think that's, just the fact that we've had so many games that have gone on is a testament to how dedicated these coaches are. And it says a lot about them. And, it is a very difficult time, like you said. Playing football in the spring is just, it's unreal. But to make it through what these guys have gone through to get on the field, and that's not to take anything away from any of the other sports, whether it's soccer, cross country, track and field. I think the same can be said about all of these things. But kudos to these student athletes that have stuck with it and gotten through it. And let's hope that their hard work is paying off and they'll see the fruits of their labor, especially for those that want to move on to the next level.
No, I 100% agree. The ADs put in a ton of work, bus drivers, referees, everybody working the chain gangs on Friday nights, and the working the gates and all the extra staff that's showing up to games to help make sure people are social distancing and those types of things. I think I really do think it's a privilege to be able to play high school sports in general, but I do more than anything, the effort that people put forward, and I think the strong desire to compete, and give themselves a chance to have something back that they didn't realize how much they missed. So we've seen that at our level, and at our school we've seen it quite a bit. You've seen kind of the highs and the lows. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster over the last month and a half, and not necessarily for the testing or anything, just mentally. I think just putting yourself in the right mindset, for this quick season. Not really, I don't think any coach would tell you that they were completely prepared relative to a normal season. I think that we kind of just flew by the seat of our pants. All of us probably dealt with some type of injuries. We were decimated with injuries. We had a lot of things we've had to deal with throughout, but, perseverance is part of playing high school sports. And you and I raised our kids with, not necessarily thinking they're going to play professional sports, but utilizing sports as kind of a way to deal with regular life, things that are going to come up.
It's funny you say that because earlier today I was over at the post office and ran into a good friend, and we were talking about, the absence of sports and what we've had to do in the meantime. And we got to talking about our kids. He raised a couple of kids that came through were youth sports athletes, and now he's excited because he now has grandkids and gets to do it all over again. But the one thing that we both agreed upon about our kids going through and playing organized sports and is coming out on the other end with a good work ethic. Of all of the characteristics that you get from playing sports, I think that may be one of the most important things is work ethic. And you see that these kids were challenged more this year than they ever have been. And really, when they come out on the other side, they're going to go, we made it through a really difficult time and we maintain that work ethic. And to me, at least with my kids, and I'm sure you feel the same way, that's that's probably the most important thing, and one of the things I'm most proud of is the work ethic that the kids have.
No, I mean, I totally agree. It's, we're cut from the same cloth in that regard. And I think what's probably the best thing for me is to see, for these kids to see, look, life can be normal again, or at least somewhat normal. We're not going to, I don't know if we'll ever get back to what it's kind of like after 9/11, before 9/11, you just jumped in a security line, flew through the security line and got on the plane and went. And then after 9/11, you got to take your shoes off and take your iPad out and take your computer. And it just we never had to do that. Yeah. It didn't make our life worse or anything like that. It just is a little bit more inconvenient. And I think that's what we'll be dealing with probably for the relative future, and probably in the fall, we'll probably still be dealing with those types of things. But, as opposed to not having anything, I think we'll take it. I mean, at least that's how I feel about it.
Absolutely. And, I think that's a good segue, into us getting into the scores for this week. I'm gonna start things off, and I'll say this: I was extremely happy to be able to attend my first football game this week, and it was everything I had hoped for. Got an invitation to attend the Ripon-Escalon game, and you've heard me talk about this before. Ripon-Escalon is one of those games that you just put on the calendar, and if you're able to go, you go, because it's always going to be entertaining. And I can honestly say this game on Saturday was no different. Thanks to my buddy Frost for setting this up, and it was everything I'd hoped for. It was the feeling of Friday Night Lights, although it was a Saturday. It wasn't the fall; it was the spring, but it had the same feel. The weather was, nice and cool. The grass, as the sun went down, the grass got cold and wet, and the sound of, the refs blowing their whistles and the football players running around the field and guys hitting each other. There's just nothing like it. And, like I said, when you see a Ripon-Escalon game, it's Friday Night Lights. It's the small school atmosphere, but playing on, to me, even though it's a small school, it's a big stage. And these players play for a lot of pride. And that's really what was on the line here, was pride. And the final score was very close. It was 10-7, Escalon coming out on top, but it could have easily gone the other way. It was just a hard-fought football game. There was everything you'd hope for from a Ripon-Escalon game. There was trash talking at its finest. There were some big hits. There were some late hits. There were some penalties. There were some, unsportsmanlike stuff. And, in the grand scheme of things, it was perfect to have all this and get to see it. It was a great game. Unfortunately, somebody has to lose in a game like this, but it was a well-played game on both sides. And it was really fun to watch. We don't have stats from Ripon, but we do have some from Escalon. And I think it's worthy to talk about some of these. Ty Harris was quarterback for Escalon. He's a pretty mobile quarterback. He was 9 of 21 for 198 yards. He's one of those quarterbacks that you've got to keep him in containment or he's going to hurt you. He's got a strong arm. He was overthrowing his receivers in the first half, but I think he got it dialed in pretty good in the second half. His main target was Owen Nash. He had 6 receptions for 173 yards. He's only a sophomore, so here's a kid that we're going to get to see again for the next 2 years. I know his father, and if he's anything like his father, he's going to be fun to watch over the next couple years. And then Logan Anderson. Logan's a sophomore as well. He had 3 carries for 17 yards, but the story here was I'm guessing his brother Luke Anderson. He had 18 carries for 135 yards, and this kid runs hard. Yeah, he's an aggressive football player, and when he gets the ball, he puts his head down and he runs really hard. He's fun to watch, and I think we'll probably see him, playing somewhere at the next level. At least I hope so. And then defensively, let's see here. Again, this is a team that spreads the wealth around. You had Caden Gonzalez. He had 6 tackles. Eli Lattig, he's an interesting player. From what Frost was telling me, he doesn't get to practice a whole lot with the team. He's, from what I understand, an outstanding tennis player. And so he comes in and gets very little practice time, but he stood out defensively. He had a great game. He had 4 tackles, and I thought he had an interception there towards the end of the game, but I don't remember. From the Ripon side of things, again, we don't have statistics to go off of, but there were some kids there's a lot of kids on that team that really stood out. But I think just one that passes the look test was Bronson Burrow. He's only a junior, 6'7", 230 pounds. I guess, he's pretty awesome in basketball from what I understand, but he's the type of guy that you just throw the ball up and he's going to go get it. He's an impressive looking kid. Jacob Curlis on the offensive line, I liked watching him. He did pretty well. And then there's another kid that, from what I understand, is his first year playing, but he's the type of kid that I think will play at the next level, and that was Malik Taylor. He was senior, and he's very athletic, very good-looking football player. But all in all, like I said, the atmosphere was everything you'd hoped it would be. The stands weren't packed to the gills like they normally would be. They had to adhere to the COVID rules and those things. But, I mean, just the little things that we take for granted. Seeing a football scoreboard that's lit up, seeing people in the stands, the lights on the football field, the people in line at a snack bar, it was just so good to see this. The officiating, something to be said about that too. Good. Really appreciate the fact that these guys are, officiating these football games, but you could tell they were rusty as well. It's fun to hear the parents in the stands yelling at the officials too. That's another aspect of it. And I got to tell you, there was a couple of times that the parents had some legitimate concerns, but I'll leave it at that. But all in all, just a great atmosphere. It was Friday Night Lights. It was fun. And I can only hope that, there's more to that to come this fall, and we're able to fill the stands. The Escalon people and the Ripon people, they're just passionate, great people, and it was really fun to watch. There were parents that I'm assuming parents or family members that couldn't get into the stadium. They're standing outside the fence, and which I think is ridiculous. If we're going to have them stand outside the fence, let them come in and sit in the stands. It's like,
stand around the field. Something.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of credit to the parents and the fans there. But what a great atmosphere! I had a great time. That was a great football game. Again, the final score: Escalon 10, Ripon 7.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it at length. The Escalons, the Ripons, the Sonoras, the Calaverases. It's a small town Americana. I mean, it's where when football is important to a town, it's just a different environment. And to have 2 of those schools play each other, much like when Escalon played Oakdale week 1, it was probably much the same. We weren't privileged enough to get to watch that game, but it's there's just something about it. You walk onto those types of fields, and the smell is just different, and the feel is different, and all those types of things. So as we get into the scoreboard for the rest of the week, it's going to be very depleted and sporadic because a lot of teams are just not putting in stats. I don't know if it's just burnout or what's going on, but we're getting just such a partial box score recap that it puts us in a real bad spot to kind of highlight the kids like we'd like to do. So we're going to focus on the scores themselves, and then try to highlight some players here and there. Kind of going down the list of the week, Edison played McNair. Edison handled him pretty easily at 56-6. Riverbank goes to Waterford, and Waterford just takes him behind the woodshed. It's a 60-8 score. And then rounding out that first Friday night, you had Argonaut going to Amador, and Amador shutting out Argonaut 42-0. So those Argonaut Amador games, that school's about 5 miles. Those schools are about 5 miles apart. So I'm sure there's a ton of rivalry there. Talk about trash talking. It'd have been nice to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, there. That's a little surprising score for me there. I would figure that Argonaut would have put some points on the board. So again, not seeing statistics and not being at the game, there's probably more to the story there. we go over to the west side. We had Patterson playing Grace Davis. Patterson 49-22. Patterson in the last 10 years they've been the recipient of some very good athletes transplanting over from the Bay Area. So really good football program there. And then it seems like every week we talk about this team, Kimball. They lose their coach first week before the season starts, and they've just been steamrolling teams. Kimball 46, Sierra 13, and then we'll come back on that one. Let's see here. I've got some stats to pull up. It seems like Nick Coronado is we're always talking about him, and last week he threw for 7 touchdowns. He didn't let up this week. He was 15 of 21, 229 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns. He's a fantastic player. I think we're going to see him playing at the next level. And the nice thing is that we're going to get to see him play again next year. Receiving wise, Mason Riviera had 4 catches for 95 yards, and Jerome Nance had 3 catches for 89 yards. Both of those guys are juniors. They're coming back. Kimball is going to be an offensive juggernaut next year. Let's see here. Rushing, we had Alonzo Jackson. This is the one kid that won't be coming back next year. He had 24 carries for 179 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he had a heck of a week as well. And like we said, we didn't get any statistics from Sierra.
Yeah, it's just tough. I mean, it's tough for us to kind of analyze and recap. But I think one of the games of the week this week will be Houston Kimball. Let's go ahead and let's talk about Houston, what they did last week. They went into Orostimba and really just had their way with them. They walk away with a 34-12 score. Houston didn't enter any passing stats, but their quarterback's Aiden Meyer. Aiden and Nick throw with the same quarterback coach, so this weekend will be pretty cool for the Pinelli Passing Academy to get to watch Aiden and Nick compete against each other. Aiden's a big, strong kid. He can sling it a little bit, and he's a tough runner as well. So statistically, didn't look like anybody did anything rushing the ball that was super exciting for Houston, but they don't have passing or receiving stats in, so it's kind of hard to kind of analyze that. But Casillas from Orostimba was 20 for 31 for 224 and a touchdown, and he also rushed 9 times for 38 yards and another touchdown. So and then Orostimba's got Jaden Vargas. I think his brother graduated a couple of years ago. Pretty good player. And Jaden seems like he's going to fit the mold there. He got 5 catches for 117. Just kind of going down the list. One of the games of the week last week was Manteca Oakdale. Oakdale goes into Manteca and loses by a field goal. They lost 23-26. And then Buick Colony goes to Atwater and just gives it to them pretty good. It's a 30-0 score.
On that Oakdale Manteca score, I do want to say Lion Cologne he's a junior from Manteca. He had 20 carries for 301 yards and 4 touchdowns.
You're ahead of me. He was going to be my player of the week.
He still can be. I'm just saying. I want to make sure.
It's tough. I mean, we're trying not to be too one-sided with this stuff, but when one team puts in stats and the other one doesn't, it kind of puts us at a disadvantage.
But stats like that, I don't care who puts their stats in. When you have stats like that, that's pretty respectable.
Yes, sir.
Especially against. I mean, to put, and this is not a jab at Oakdale at all. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Oakdale. I think they're absolutely fantastic program. But if you can put that kind of yardage on an Oakdale team, that's saying something right there.
Yeah. No, and these Mantecas, the Kimballs, they're not surprising themselves for sure. Manteca, they played for a state title, so obviously not them. But the Kimballs and the Houstons and these teams that are everybody's kind of saying, oh, where'd they come from? These kids can play. I mean, they just straight get after it. And if rounding out my scores for this week, you have Tracy beating Tokay 29-7. Ty DiDonato was 5 for 20 for 85 yards and a pick for Tokay. Their leading rusher was Jose Bravo. He was 20 for 105, no touchdowns. And their leading receiver was Xavier Moreno. He had 2 catches for 48 yards and no touchdowns. On the Tracy side of the ball, Drew Frederick was 6 for 17 for 97, no touchdowns and 2 picks, but they ran the ball 46 times for 311 yards, with the leading carrier being Austin Hoy-Sai. He rushed 17 times for 97 yards and a touchdown. Chase Henderson was 10 for 62 and a touchdown, and Khalil Walls was 5 for 72 and 2 touchdowns for Tracy. On the receiving side of the ball, the leading receiver was Jason Gularte. He was 2 for 42, no touchdowns. Leading tackler for Tracy was Steven Garcia. He had 11 tackles. And then you had Cameron Pereira had 6 total tackles, but 3.5 for loss. So that's pretty good on the Toque side of the ball. Jose Bravo had 18 tackles on the night, 1 tackle for loss. Elias Castro was 10 tackles, 2 tackles for losses, and then Anakin Salazar had 11 tackles on the defensive side of the ball. So pretty dang good game, for Tracy. Tracy having a kind of a tough 2 weeks ahead of previous to that. They saw St. Mary's and they saw Lincoln. So to come out with a win to help them out for their season, I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Next score I've got up that we'll cover just briefly is Franklin Chavez, crosstown rival. Final score was Chavez 28, Franklin 7. Again, one-sided on the stats. We only have stats for Chavez. Brandon Wood, quarterback, was 12 of 20, 185 yards and a touchdown. Rushing, we had a couple of kids. Reuben Hooks, which we've talked about him in the past. He was 15 of 69 with a touchdown. Brandon Wood was 7 carries for 17 yards and a touchdown. And then Daniel Herrera had the most carries with 17 for 58 yards. Receiving wise, it was kind of spread around pretty evenly. And I apologize if I butcher this name, Sejan Alford. He had 5 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown. And then on the defensive side of the football, it was kind of by committee. I don't know that there's any one player that we can say stood out. Isaac Esquivel. I'm sorry. I'm terrible at some of these names, so I apologize. He had 7 tackles, 2 for a loss, and then let's see here. We'll just highlight him and move on.
Yeah, it just puts us in a really bad spot. We're as prepared as we can possibly be, but not having a lot of information when you're not allowed to physically attend games. It's difficult to do a solid recap. But I think as we get into next year and things will start to open up, we've already have some pretty good ideas about how we want to do some stuff. So it'll be a lot more informative. Before we get into this week's matchups, I think it's we'd like to kind of highlight some of the stats for our section. I think one of the most impressive stats I've seen. Obviously, we've talked about Nick Coronado quite a bit. But Nick's the number 6 rated passer, yards-wise, in the state. Pretty good from, again, coming from Kimball. You're talking about schools like Folsom and, these other much larger schools ahead of Kimball, and Nick's right there with them all. So his quarterback rating is as high as anyone's. He's got a 110 or 122 quarterback rating actually, which is 17 touchdowns and 4 picks for 1,272 yards on the season is pretty stellar. Keep going down the list a little bit. The next highest rated quarterback in our area relative to the state of California is going to be Cruz Marinus at Grigori. Cruz is thrown for 992 yards. He only has 6 touchdowns passing and 3 picks, but he's also a dual threat quarterback. That's pretty good. And then Wyatt Green rounds out the top 30. He's got 955 yards passing at Mariposa County. So pretty impressive for these kids to kind of have the seasons that they're having. Like you mentioned a little bit earlier, it's neat to see because we're going to have Nick coming back. He's only a junior, so he returns in the fall. And I would highly expect there's going to be some potent offenses. You're talking about teams playing football games in April. When you're going to start just about ready to start spring. So you kind of have an idea of what you're going to have next year right now. And so it gives you 3 months before your next game. So it's almost like you're going to get a do-over. For the golfers out there, you're getting your mulligan.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing I want to say too, I've gotten to watch a couple of games online and then getting to watch that game live on Saturday. The one thing that I really enjoy is, from a coaching perspective, to see these coaches do things that maybe they wouldn't normally do during normal season. Like going for it on fourth down when, in a part of the field that maybe you wouldn't. And the whole logic behind that is you're playing for pride. You're not playing to make a state bowl game. You're not playing for the playoffs. You're playing for pride. So when we roll around to the fall, I hope the coaches kind of keep a little bit of that mentality, because to me, that's really fun to see these non-traditional choices that they're making during the game to do things. And, it's really, and I'm sure the kids probably are getting a kick out of it as well, but it's really fun to watch. When there's, certain amount of time in the second period and it's 4th and 1 and you're on your own 49, do you go for it? Do you punt? What do you do? And, it's been fun to watch that process and how it's been different this year.
It's definitely, and as a coach, I've seen it much different. We probably had 5 onside kicks against us and multiple fake punts. And we actually went for it. I think we were on our own 37 and went for it it was 4th and like a yard. We ended up picking it up, but I could have been the dumbest guy in the world by going for it there. But I think, like
you're
you said,
a hero though when it works. It's
not me. I didn't get it done, but I'm in the GOAT for sure. But I think you're right. I think it's one of those things that you're more apt to do it because there's not so much on the line. And I think I've seen coaches that don't necessarily have the reputation for being kind of easygoing and laid back, very, very disciplined, strict, do it my way or the highway type, and just completely change their demeanor this fall or this spring. So I think sometimes it's good things come out of things that, bad things that happen. And maybe this is, like you said, maybe this is one of them. Maybe it's something where, coaches start to open things up and trust the players a little bit more. I've gone so far as to ask the players what kind of plays they want to run. What do you feel comfortable with running? What would you guys like to run this Friday? Not necessarily around my game plan, but it just gives them a little bit more input and they feel like they're more a part of the process. So,
yeah, for sure. I want to talk about another crosstown rival game that we had this week, Stagg and Bear Creek. Stagg winning 42-12. Stagg, the Stockton Record recently did an article on Stagg and how they're producing these Division I football players, and I'm sure the coaching there has been really good over the years. Coach Nava's been there for 127 years or something like that. But anyway, he does a really good job with that program. You can go there in the off season and you can see the dedication level there is really good. Their facilities are much improved. But you had a final score again. Stagg beating Bear Creek 42-12. A couple players stood out in this game. You had Angel Gonzalez. He's a junior. He's going to be coming back next year. He was 4-13 passing and had 3 touchdowns. And then Willie Turner. He's a junior as well. He had 3 carries, 52 yards. And then let's see here. He had another. He had an 80-yard reception for a touchdown. So. Stagg's got some good things happening. They've got a lot of juniors coming back next year, and hopefully they'll take what they've done in the spring and kind of apply it as like a spring football and come back and be stronger than ever in the fall.
Yeah, Stagg has a pretty good ties to a couple of different colleges where they're sending kids on a regular basis, which is really, really good. I think that's building those at the D1 level, like you said. It's not like you're and not to knock a smaller school, but to have those relationships with a D1 school that you're continually sending kids to. I think there's like 6 or 7 kids, and I want to say it's Idaho or Idaho State. It's the Vandals, whatever the Vandals are. But like I said, there weren't a lot of stats, so it's difficult for us to cover. So we're just going to cover. We'll talk about we'll prelude this weekend. It's kind of rivalry week, I think, this week. You have Downey going to Modesto. Downey's 2-2. been an offensive powerhouse for quite a while. They're going to be at Modesto, and then Davis will be at Bayer. So both of those games are going to be probably pretty toughly contested, with them being relatively close to each other. I think most of the teams everybody's trying to round out their season with a common opponent that they, again, have some type of a rivalry with. You have, Waterford going to Denair, Turlock going to Pittman, and then Franklin's coming to Linden for Linden senior night. Sierra goes to Escalon, Riverbank at Houston. Actually, Houston is playing Kimball because I think there was a COVID issue with one of the schools. So Houston actually plays Kimball. See, this is the misinformation.
That's going to be, if that is correct, that's going to be a heck of a football game.
Yeah, I think that you're going to see
very good.
A ton of points. I'm going to throw it out there. I bet you the final score is one of them in the 50s and one of them in the high 40s. It's going to be within a score or two, and both of them scoring well over 40 points. We played Houston in playoffs last year, and Houston, they're a tough offense, and they're tough physically. But they also have the ability to throw the ball, so it's pretty impressive for them. And then we've talked at length about Kimball. So
again, going off of whether or not these matchups are correct, Oakdale Ripon, that should be an interesting game. Again, it's these non-traditional matchups that we're getting this year that are making for some interesting storylines. And I will say this, I think Ripon is definitely up to the challenge. They played Escalon very tough, and so like I said, that could have gone either way.
You have the other big game this week, and it's unfortunate for us because we haven't got to see. They're just not putting their stats in. But Lincoln Stockton is going to play Edison this weekend. You have one TCal team, one SJ2A team, both of them highly potent offenses, both of them with D1 recruits on both sides of the ball. I mean, you're talk about a high scoring game. This thing could get nuts. I mean, and I don't think they've played each other in quite a while. A lot of these kids play 7-on-7 with each other, so there's a lot of familiarity with them. But Lincoln runs, they got 6-7 guys that have D1 offers already, and Edison is pretty close to matching that. So again, if we had the ability to just kind of go to watch any game, for me, it would be this game this weekend or the Houston Kimball game, which is pretty. Both of them are going to be, I think, very, very good games. But as we get our work our way out the door today, just wanted to thank everybody for listening in. We really appreciate the viewership. We got quite a few people have added us on Twitter the last week or so. So I know that Hilmar interview with Mark Santos was really well. Wanted to thank Frosty. I don't know Frosty's last name.
He's just the Frost man for me. I tell you what, if you want to talk TVL football, this is your guy. I'll try to get his. We'll try to post his. I think he's got a Twitter account, and I know he was going Facebook Live at the game on Friday night, Saturday night. But I'm going to tell you, this guy knows TVL football, and we really look forward to having him on in the future, probably for a preview show as we get closer in the fall.
Yeah. And then special thanks to Jake Peters again. Jake does a great job producing the show for us.
Absolutely.
And really makes it easier for us to just sit here and talk for an hour or 45 minutes or so. So again, thank you to everybody for listening. You can always reach us on Twitter at 209prep. You can reach us on Facebook at 209prep sports, or you can email us at prepsports209@yahoo.com.
And who's your player of the week?
My player of the week this week, I'd already mentioned it, is Lion Cologne with 20 carries, 301 yards rushing, and 4 touchdowns. I think it's in an era where a lot of schools are slinging it around quite a bit. Lion had one heck of a week.
I'm gonna go with my player of the week is going to be somebody that I actually got to see play. Maybe didn't have the best or the highest stat count of the week, but he was playing against a very tough defense, and that's going to be Luke Anderson from Escalon. Like I mentioned, he's a hard-nosed runner, and he's fun to watch. And so Luke Anderson's my pick for the player of the week.
The two players I've been probably the most impressed with just watching run at the high school level was Luke Anderson, how hard he runs the ball, how physically gifted he is. He's just a strong kid, not tall, big, but, big, thick kid that just doesn't have any fear. And then Tyree Washington at St. Mary's, both of them run the ball angry, and that's, it's a special quality to have, when that you're going to take a hit. So those two don't take hits, they deliver them, and it's pretty impressive to watch. So thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you next week.
Have a good week.